Hello and welcome back to Burgundy Banter. My name is Juanners.
I'm Jared.
And we're back with some Burgundy Banter, a very special edition of the episode. Today we are joined by Dave Wegner of C38. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's a very flattering intro. Yeah, no, I'm great. It's the season's gotten started, and it's so far the wheels haven't come off, so I'm not in the worst mood.
Now, I want to lead in with just a very first question, because I know you have the name Dave Wegner. Many people are familiar, but you also have the alias the Pope of Commerce City, which is kind of the main the main nickname for you here that we've adopted to you. Did they not hit you up when they were figuring out a new pope?
No, I didn't get a call, which is odd because I'm from St. Louis and I'm literally down with a lot of Cardinals. So I was a little surprised not to get that ring, but at least they didn't put a North Sider in there from Chicago. They put a South Sider in, so it's okay. I'm okay handing off the mitre. I think that's what that hat's called. I should probably know that.
Yeah. You want to tell us kind of like just about your history with C38? It dates back to that merger, of course, but kind of tell us, who are you for someone who may not know about the legend himself?
Yeah, introducing Dave Wegner. Who the hell are you? Brought to you by Juan and Jared. First, like the whole history, the quick history of the Pope, the Burgundy Bishop thing. That just, during COVID, I married a friend of mine and his wife. They asked me to officiate, and she's lovely, but she's a little wound tight, and proper Connecticut wasp, and so I just wore that to do it, just without them knowing, just to kind of like, as a crack a joke. And then Halloween came around, I sort of modified it, got the burgundy in there, and then was at the game, and it was actually at the game where we went from third to first to win the West. And I'm on a keg giving a speech like I used to do, and I made a prediction, and then Johnny Lewis's parents were there, and I made the prediction that he'd score a brace, and he got his second one by the 40th minute. Like, well, I guess this is going to stick for a while. So that's how that came to be.
For those of you keeping score at home, that's one confirmed miracle. We are one away from canonhood.
Yeah. But where do I come from? So you mentioned the merger. So before 2013's season, there were multiple supporters groups, and it's always been the case all the way back to like the River Rats days and all the OG groups. But at the time there were three groups: the Bulldog supporters group, which I was in charge of. I was an elected president with them, and then there was the Pit Army, which is also a terrace dweller with us, and then Class 6, which had the posh seats. Mm-hmm. And then we some events came together that were frustrating for all the groups, and we just kind of bonded together and were able to solve the problems with ownership. With management, because we don't see ownership, but and to Tim Hinchy's credit, the president at the time, he did a really good job of taking the issues seriously. He brought in execs from the league, heads of the organizations that were do stadium management, whether it be Argus or whomever, and we had a big sit down, and we realized the leadership of each of the groups was like, we realized that there was an opportunity here. We can actually work together. It probably helped that I was new blood for BSG, because they didn't know me yet, so they didn't distrust me yet. There was some old issues back in the day that I just don't even want to get into. But so we just sort of threw it all together. Just January 26, 2013 was our official birthday, if you want to call it that, because that's when we filed documents. But with the state, but and then ever since then, it's just been hold on for dear life. I mean, it's a volunteer army. We try and do a lot with a little. In earlier days, it would be like 2 kegs and somebody with a pump tap, and now we're running jockey tap lines, and it's just the way the machine has developed and grown. It's something I'm really proud of on behalf of the group, and the effort that so many people have put in to get there, myself included, I guess. But so we're in our 12th, 13th year now, and I guess people used to call me the president. We didn't really have a president. We sort of like leadership by committee. It just sort of happened. I was the loudest voice in the room, and I was the one that was most comfortable throwing a mic in front of myself and getting on TV and doing interviews and meeting with the front office. So it was sort of a de facto title. I never was 100% comfortable with that, but it's flattering, I guess. And in this off season, it was time for me to take a step back and let some new blood take things on. There was some wrinkles to that, but it's really good to see Nina Rice, who's kind of taken those reins. She's fantastic. I think she's going to do better at this than I did. She has the temperament. I'm getting old, so I get cranky at people, and I don't know how to speak Gen X. So, but she's fantastic, and she's already taken on some pretty heavy stuff behind the scenes. I don't think people realize the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. It can be really, really tricky to navigate. But she's crushing it, and a lot of people have stepped up to support her, and I think you'll see some positive changes and some new energy, which is really kind of a good thing. I mean, it's a community that's growing and getting more strong day over day, year over year, and new blood, new ideas is really, really, really good to see come in.
One of the big things that I noticed into my entry into C38 was if anyone wanted to get involved, they would typically go to you because from there where to kind of set people, and I think beyond just being the de facto president, I think the organization skills is kind of something that gets lost sometimes, because I think you got a good pulse on who and where people should meet up with, and it's a burden and a skill, I guess, to know where the bodies are buried. I just, when I was doing all the transition stuff for Nina and the council, it just makes you realize I wish I had written more stuff down over the last decade plus, because I just knew the stuff, so right. I didn't really need to work. I just had it. It had the Rolodex in the head. But I mean, I save all these old emails. I got everything categorized, so it wasn't too hard to sort of break that stuff down. But yeah, and it's funny. It was easy to manage. I mean, I just got used to it. But it was funny as I was sort of decoupling myself from the different stuff that I was more heavily involved in. And now that I'm not doing it, I was like, oh man, I might have put more time into that than I thought. I've got all this free time now. I'm like, maybe I'll go volunteer somewhere and get on some boards or something. But yeah, it was always nice. I mean, one of the things is that I really love now, and I think it's a biggest compliment to all the effort that people have put into this to make it grow to where it is now, is that I don't know everybody. There was a time where I knew everybody, and the fact that I don't is not because I was detached from it. It's just the fact that you got a lot of new folks, and that's great, because that's the ultimate goal, is to grow and add people to this community we've built. And then with that, you get new talents, like, for example, Nina, who came in a couple years ago and started helping out with tickets and just became just a bedrock of what we do. Her husband, Matt, who's just great. It's just all these little construction projects with one of our mini sheds. And that's how this thing goes, because you can't do it forever, because eventually, you're going to burn out or, die. I mean, there's an end to everything. So seeing some new folks get in, and then, like with the way this offseason went, one of the other things that I think is really good is that we're not going to lose our foundation of who we are. And our general mission is, we are a rapid supporters group. Getting some of the older, folks that have been around since day one, getting them kind of more into, getting more into leadership is really, really nice to see. I think some of it was, I'm a big voice in the room, and I think there were a lot of people from back in the day that just trusted me to do the stuff that kept it consistent with what their goals were. And with me kind of needing to step back, I had to tell them, I was like, I can't speak on your behalf anymore. You gotta get it. You gotta get your hands in the dirt a little bit. And it's working out really well, because it creates that balance of like, okay, we want to try this new thing, but how have we done it in the past? Why did it work or not work in the past? Staying true to our roots and all this other stuff, which is always the challenging balancing act. Because for the longest time, not everything the group did is what I agreed with, but it was what the group wanted. So we just made sure it happened. I mean, you're not going to agree with 100% of everything. And so having to sort of lead from the middle a little bit and play those politics was kind of fun.
Also a little frustrating at times, but it was kind of fun. But I think it was necessary because, you know, when you come in with 3 distinctive cultures like we did in the merger, and then all the issues that can happen in a supporters group naturally when you get a large group of people together, and just the nature of supporters groups are, you know, more or less historically progressive, so they're a little more plugged into the political scene, and all this other stuff is trying to maintain balance, and that's what I'm, to be genuinely honest, that's one of the things I'm most proud of, because that's the duct tape that we needed to do as a group to hold it together. Because at the end of the day, we want to create this wonderful open environment where everybody's welcome, but we don't tell them why. It's just, you know, the canvas is the rapids, but we just want an open door policy. Come in, hang out with us. We don't, and we feel that you can affect a lot of change by just getting people in the room. And whether that's a political thing or whether it's just getting them on board with, you know, adopting more soccer in their life, more rapids in their life, MLS, whatever. So we always kept it really apolitical in that. You had to with such diversity of opinions in the early days, because we were holding on for dear life those first couple of years.
I think meeting in the middle seems to be something that we, as just maybe a whole country, don't do as well as we probably should. But one of the things that I see in a supporters group that is, like you said, an army of volunteers, is that there are a lot of ideas that come to the forefront. One thing that I've tried to tell people a lot of times is the idea you have will be just as strong and just as viable as the time you're willing to put into it.
Yep.
How have you seen people who stick around, people who take something and own it?
Yeah.
What are some kind of traits that you see in them, or things that they've done that give it a little bit more staying power?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. So I've got a history of voluntelling people. Talk to Jared and Lisa about that. I think, Juan, you've been voluntold for a few things. You know, sometimes you just got to grab people, say, hey, I need help at the beer. You know, I need help on the buses. Jump in, help me carry this, help me do this, whatever. And everybody's really always willing to step up. But people that sort of own the things they do, I think where the success is first of all, we empower people that have ideas to the extent, like you said, of the contribution they're going to make to it. Like, hey, if you got a great idea, you want to do an event, cool, great, you got to run it, because we're all stretched pretty thin, or historically. It's getting better. There's a lot more teamwork going on. There's a lot more people involved at upper levels and this, that, and the other. But where the people have been really successful in the stuff that they've been empowered to take on, it's stuff that they're somewhat passionate about. I mean, they have to have that sort of passion. I mean, you go and you look at the tailgate crew, you know, the camaraderie that happens behind the grills. I mean, I don't think, you know, Dev had dreams of cooking hot dogs for free, but he owns it and loves it. We celebrate him for it. I've gotten him a couple different hot dog hats over the years.
Chief Hot Dog Officer as of last week, I believe.
Yeah, the hot dog king of Commerce City, if you want a Ferris Bueller reference. But yeah, like, and you know, like Austin, who, you know, runs the DJ tent. Like I've seen him grow over the years, like yeah, because he's kind of learning genres and understanding, like, tying in with themes, and he's putting the work in. He's also got, you know, some help there with another guy whose name is blanking on me, and I apologize for that to that person.
Can't know everyone.
Yeah, right. Met him a couple times, but he's a professional DJ, and so taking that on, and, like, you know, Lisa and Jared are doing a lot with watch parties and special events, and like Pride coming up here this weekend, and it's stuff that's close to their heart. And that's really where it comes in, and then just giving them the support they need to do it. I think the best example is, realistically, I look at the TIFO crew, and specifically like Oscar Mejia, who's just, you know, comes up with some incredible stuff. Obviously Mason, Trevor, Quinn, all the other guys, all the other folks involved there, but Oscar likes to go big, and I've had enough conversations with her. I'm like, if you want to go big, go big. You tell me what you want to do, and we'll find you the infrastructure to make it happen. So, like, telescopic ladders and things like this. But he's OG. He's from back in the day when you paid for TIFO by passing a hat. But now we're in a pretty we're fiscally healthy as a group, with some business structures that we've had over the years. It's a little bit boring, but happy to talk about it. But we want to keep people awake, right? But, like, really, the sky's the limit. And just trying to convince some of these folks is, like, don't assume that the answer is no. So that's why it's kind of funny where there's been occasional pushback. Like, people were afraid to, like, come talk to me about ideas because they thought I was going to say no. I was like, I'm not in the no business. I'm in the how business. And there are ideas that aren't good. Like, we had, in early days, we had an idea thrown at us to put, special card readers in all the bars in Adams County. It was $100,000. We had $60 in the bank. Like, so that's not a no by opinion. That's just a no by default. Like, there's just, like I said, I'm in the how business. There was no how there. But we've always been pretty good, I think, at trying to get people's ideas through the door, whether it's a merch design, a scarf design. Even the TIFO crew, like they are always looking for new ideas. Like, I'm biased, but I think it's a very open-minded group when it comes to opportunities and what people want to do. And it's just, you got to bring it up. Yeah. And now you don't have to bug me about it. You can go bug Nina. She loves it. No, she's always at the merch table if anybody has any questions.
Yeah. Something that kind of has always bothered me, from people on the outside is saying, well, why doesn't C38 do this, right? Or why don't they chant this, or why can't we do this? And it's always my response is always, well, get in here and help us out, right? Yeah. That's kind of been
it's a hands in the dirt organization. And also, like, it's great. Why don't we do it? Well, either we've tried it and it didn't work, or we don't know it's an idea, so maybe you should speak up.
Yes.
And I just don't think there's anybody. There's enough people that are approachable in this group that are pretty recognizable. And like I said, if you're new and you don't know, just go to the merch and ticket table and just be, hey, I was wanting to get more involved, or I had this idea, and there will be somebody there that can point you in the right direction. Or you can come find me. I'm the tall guy that just used to walk around like a madman, but now I don't have to. And technically can't physically do that anymore. Anyways, I'm getting old, but yeah, it's just the first thing that people should do when they have an idea and they're wondering why this and why that is, who should I talk to? That should be the first question that comes out of their mouth. And there's enough people that know enough people that will find you a spot. And if it's a terrible idea, it's a terrible idea, but you can't get the good ideas without some bad ones in there. But we don't really get too many horrible ideas. So
I want to go kind of speak more about just however many details you want to go into, because I know you were kind of stepped down due to just some medical reasons. But beyond that, like when did you figure out it was like, all right, it is, because I remember the time when it used to be elections, right?
Yeah.
And you would have to be elected onto the junior board, and from there onto the senior board.
Yeah.
Kind of did away with that. And
let me I want to explain that, because we just kind of adopted this idea that it's benevolent dictatorship.
Right.
And the reason we got away from election is not because we're not democratic. It's because we needed people on the council or the board that were going to be actively involved, and we were getting too many people that were getting in those positions through elections that weren't contributing and doing the job. And so what we did is we flattened it out and got rid of the board, and then adopted sort of a supporters council. And what we did is we built it out. We wanted every aspect of C38, of the C38 game day experience, whether from a volunteer standpoint, transportation standpoint, merch, beer, tailgate, or just sections that people sit in, to be represented in that council. We wanted to be democratic in that way. But there were appointments, and we put an open call out for people that were interested, and we just made sure that all these boxes were checked. And in some areas, some people have they check multiple boxes, like, there are Sammy Davis Jr. That's an old reference. You guys give you a second to Google him. But we wanted to make sure everything was covered. And we had, I think, 15, 20 people in the original council. One of the things we didn't do, and I own this because at the end of the day, I'm the buck stops here guy, or at least I was, is that we didn't audit it every year to just make sure. What we did is we kind of audited it from our participation standpoint, but not making sure we were slotted in everywhere. And there was no vetting. And the vetting was pretty light anyways. But so that's why we got rid of the elections. It wasn't because we were trying to, create this totalitarian environment. It's not because I was trying to stay in power.
Right.
I've been trying to give it away for years. It was just, we functionally had to have people active at that level. And we also felt by flattening it out and widening it, when people are more active at that level, they also help out more on the volunteer level on game days. So instead of having like 4 or 5 people at the top that were actively doing stuff and trying to make sure everything goes, now we have a lot more people with their hands in the dirt and doing that lifting and making it a lot easier for some of our really core active volunteers. So I've been looking at transitioning out of leadership for a while, but because of the structure, it's a matter of waiting for the right person to come along that can kind of take over this sort of specific role that I have. And I do a lot, or did a lot. But specifically, this role needs to be somebody that can at least understand where everything is getting done to check in and just manage everything has to flow through one person from a standpoint of making sure that on game day, okay, do we have somebody running tailgate? Do we have somebody running the merch table? Do we have somebody here for tickets? Do we have this? Do we have that? And just managing those departments in those areas, and also being a point person for the front office. You can't have 8 different people email in the front office. And then also a point person, probably with our outside business, partnerships or relationships we have with, whether they be breweries or bars or whatever. So we just didn't have that person for a while. I was that person for Mark Bodmer. Mark was kind of we call him he was the grand poobah. Excuse me. And then he needed to step away because he was starting his own business, and he just didn't have the time. So it worked out. I had the shoulders for it. We had some other people that kind of wanted it over the years, but it was a bit much once they got introduced to it. They're like, oh, shoot.
I'm right here.
Right. But then Nina kind of came up through the ranks and just was ever present and just like taking on more responsibilities. And the responsibilities she was taking on were very, very much on a lot of them on the business side, like the ticket side, which is a huge issue for us. And she just built up the trust, at least with me. And I could see she had the trust of other people around her. I didn't ask her to take over. I just sort of voluntold her.
Nina has the boiling frog scenario, right, where she didn't get dropped in the boiling pot. It just all kind of heated up around her for a long enough.
Yeah, and I've apologized to her profusely. But she also has the support system at home. Like Matt, her husband, her partner, is fantastic, and he's actively involved, and so it works out really well. But yeah, I was planning on kind of weaning myself away over the year, but there was some stuff in the off season that kind of went down that just I realized I just didn't have it in me, and it started with so for those that haven't seen me, I was walking around the first couple of games all bandaged up. I had an open cut on a finger. It turned into a microbacterial staph infection from my aquarium, which I'm looking at right now. And because of that, I couldn't take medication for another thing I deal with, which was rheumatoid arthritis. And so I had inflammation in my shoulder that for about 4 or 5 months felt like my shoulder was dislocated. So it was constant pain, not able to sleep. So that's where my mindset was. And then my dad died in the middle of it, or just at the beginning of all that, at the end of the season last year. So I was a little anger issues there. And then in the middle of it, I decided to break my foot. So I had a lot of stuff going on. On the mend now. I mean, Dad's still dead, but that's, that is what it is. And for the record, he was suffering from dementia. So I wish he would have passed a couple years ago, but it is what it is. So anyways, and there was some contentious stuff that was going on in the off season internally, and I don't want to really get too far in the weeds on that. But just to put it plainly, I didn't have the energy or the bandwidth to deal with it. And it was some newer folks that really high energy folks, really had some big ideas, really wanted to be heavily involved, but they just didn't they were new and they didn't understand the culture. And it got a bit accusatory in some levels towards me. And I was just like, I don't need this. I've already been through these wars, and it's time for the new blood. And I realized, the few people that weren't going to listen to me, they weren't listening to me. I don't think it was out of disrespect for me individually. I just don't think they understood that I'd been around for so long. And when I speak in council meetings, I'm not usually speaking on my own behalf as much as I'm speaking from the experiences over the past 13 years, 14 years, and all the conversations I've had with the leadership of the locos or this, that, and the other, to understand where the bandwidth of the group is. So I usually try to present things from a representative standpoint. I don't think they understood that. And I tried to explain it, but at that point, I think some damage was already done. So that's when I realized, I think when everything gets challenged, you got to look in the mirror and see what your contribution is to it and how you can personally, positively impact it. And I realized I'm the biggest voice in the room. And I don't say that braggadociously. It's just who I am. And a lot of people in the council just didn't speak up. And a lot of people that were part of the council but not active in the council, they always trusted me to kind of cover them. And that's when I had to have those conversations. I need you guys to come back in and be active. I need you to start speaking up because my time's almost done here, and I can't speak on your behalf anymore. And then also working with other folks like Nina and getting some stuff transitioned, getting processes written down so that I can make that quicker handoff. I realized if I can step back, do the old Obi-Wan Kenobi and just turn off the lightsaber and let Darth Vader take his swing, I'm more valuable to the group that way in a supporting role than a leading role, because it really should be leadership by committee, and it just hadn't been that for a long time. And I own that to a degree. That's if there's a fault in that, it's my fault. But seeing everybody step up and get through the battles, the internal battles over the last couple of months, and seeing them still lead this group and coming up with all these new ideas has been really, really rewarding. I mean, it's been fantastic. I genuinely think the group is in exponentially better shape today than it was yesterday. And I mean, that's not being self-effacing or anything. I really like what's going on. I like that we can still be committed to an incredibly fun, open Pride Day with the amateur drag stuff. I love the fact that we're still going to do Brew Fest. I just sent some emails out on today with Leland. We're seeing more diversity in watch parties, although we probably got to work that out a little bit because that's always been a struggle, the watch parties. Just seeing folks take stuff on, Jared with the bands and kind of modifying that to his own tastes. And Austin at the DJ booth, just trying to work through stuff. Like we had the Frank Sinatra band and, doing all the standards, and Austin was doing all the 50s music, which, by the way, Austin, if you're listening, 50s and 60s music are not standards. That's just old time rock and roll. You were close, but appreciate the effort. But that's my nitpicky side. But yeah, so it's I just accelerated what was inevitable. And it's probably worked out for the best that way anyways, for my own personal headspace. Unfortunately, some of the folks that were kind of pushing this charge for this really dynamic change, it was just inconsistent with the culture and with our mission. And unfortunately they've stepped away, which is probably the best for them. I mean, nobody should be miserable in this. And, I wish them the best. I wish it could have worked out because they were, high energy, high active folks, but sometimes not everything's a fit. It just is what it is. But that's kind of the gist of it.
I wanted to, because you mentioned the culture, there was some periods of time where it definitely felt like C38 had stagnated, and then there was like a rush of groundswell, and it kind of has this like wave effect where we get a big wave of, I guess, progress for the culture, progress for the group as a whole. But more recently, I kind of wanted to mention more about the front office, because it felt like for the longest time there was kind of a clash. And then following 2023, there's definitely a lot more support from the front office. They had an influx of people that, I think about like Fern, right?
Yeah.
Who kind of helps be a supporter, contact in a different way, not kind of from our own, but just some guy that gets the culture and kind of can translate ideas well.
Yeah.
And I kind of see it in the most recent TIFO, because for the longest time we were talking about structures on TIFO, not being there. And the last TIFO, shout out to Logan, the Armis chess one,
that was so good.
Yeah. Not only that, I mean, just the whole display of it, to see that actual progress. We have, whatever they want to call it, the South Bank, right? But you have it welcome to, I don't know, the section just nowadays.
It looks staged. I mean, it is staged technically, but it looked a lot more planned than what it was.
Yeah. Well, beyond that, I think just there's been more infrastructure growth for C30. I mean, the two sections, of course. How are you seeing that current culture of it?
So I think, and I don't mean to make light of what was a pretty hard period for a lot of people. I genuinely think the best thing that happened to this group was COVID, because we were really flat before COVID, and then COVID hit, and I think the people that usually came out to games or would sometimes come out to games started realizing what it meant to miss this, to lose this. But then also, I think there's a lot of people post-COVID that were like, I need to get out of the house more. I need something to do. So I post-COVID is when I really saw a surge, where a lot more contribution from ideas and helping out. I don't want to go too in the weeds because I'd just be guessing, but I just know that there was a definitive difference before and after. And as far as what you were, as far as the front office goes, like Fernando Fern, for those that don't know, just keep an eye on the tailgate. He's got a very stylish mustache. He came over from LA, and that was a really good hire by the front office, and he's just been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
One of many.
Oh yeah.
I will say.
And I'm gonna parlay that. So like Fernando is, Fern's been really active, and he, it's something that Sean Sullivan, who's the VP of sales, he had brought him in part, specifically to help, liaise with the supporters culture. It's something him and I had talked about for years. Not my idea. I'm not taking credit for it, but they brought him in from LAFC, and I know LAFC's new, but they're old school Chivas. They're a little bit more, they're pretty tuned in. And to have that liaison is really, really helpful. But I also want to kind of what you alluded to a second ago is the front office has, at least since I've been around, historically always supported us. We just haven't been on the same page all the time on what that looks like. But also the biggest obstacle with the relationship with the front office isn't really the front office. It's that the front office is not independent. It's tied to another organization, and they have to kind of run things through approvals that way, and it kind of gets caught in a bit of bureaucracy. So there's been a lot of really, really good ideas that we've come up with the front office that died on the vine above the front office. And that's not a bash on the Kroenke organization. They've also helped us out in a lot of other areas. And there are some benefits to that relationship for anybody that's, been able to go to a C38 night out to the Avs, or, we're able to get Avs and Nugs tickets for our volunteers on a regular basis. So it's symbiotic. It's challenging at times. But the front office relationship has been fantastic. So like, for example, I think the Independent Supporters Council came up with an award for the best front office every year, and we nominated our front office, and they were the first winners of that award. It was well justified. But they've also, what's happened in the last year or so, thanks to Porg Smith and I think Wayne Brandt probably helped out with this a lot too before he stepped down, is they've hired a ton of people. They were always historically way understaffed, and now they're staffed very, very, very well. And there's a lot of folks there, and I don't know if this is consistent across MLS. There's a lot of folks in that front office, on top of all the new people that have been there since forever. That are there specifically because they want to be there. It's not a job for the next job, which a lot of people I think get the wrong impression on. Like Sean Sullivan, like I had mentioned before, Sully, he's been around for a while, and he does a really bang up job, and I'm sure there's opportunities out there that he could look at, but he's there because he wants to be there. Max Williams, a lot of the sales team, Caitlin Kinsler. A lot of great folks in that front office that really help out. Again, we're not always on the same page, and we do step on toes, but that good relationship has allowed us to solve a lot of problems. And I don't think most people understand what those problems are. Like, for example, just preservation of the tailgate. We've had run-ins with, Legends or KSE Legal or whatever, and the front office has always supported us in those endeavors to the point where they've put us in meetings with some higher ups in other organizations, that would probably surprise a few folks. So, but yeah, so that's healthy. Obviously it always gets strained when the team's not doing so well, but to your point with the TIFO, and the nod to, Coach Armas, and this is what I love about this club. And this is why I'm not mad that we're not a first place team every year with a big giant salary. The day after that TIFO, Coach Armas was nice enough to shoot a text to me, which I forwarded to all the appropriate people who were involved. I was not involved in that TIFO, so it didn't belong to me. But Coach Armas and I have just because of my old role, know how to get a hold of each other. That's not going to happen in LA. That's not going to happen in New York. It's not going to happen in Miami. I'm not going to get a text. Nobody in Miami is getting a text from Dave Beckham or Lionel Messi. But the access to this team, the intimacy of this team, this relationship you can have with this team, I would take that every day and fifth place over being in first place every year. Because I was having this conversation with somebody the other day that C38 is all about the Rapids, but it's bigger than just that. It's about the community. And that's why so many people put time in, like to the point where we have volunteers that come out and just volunteer for the tailgate and then go home. and it's about that community. So it's bigger than that, and we can have that because we're not one of the big glam clubs. Everything comes at a cost, and don't get me wrong, I'd love to be in first place every year, but I don't want to do that at the cost of what we've built as a community and that relationship with the front office, where now it becomes about dollars and cents only, not about culture. And so careful what you wish for. It's what I always tell people that are USL supporters. When I like down in Phoenix Rising have a great culture down there. And I was having a conversation with one of the leaders of their group, and I said, I love my team. I don't love MLS just because it's so rigid and so controlled. So careful what you wish for down here. You guys got a brilliant culture, and you got a team that has been competitive. You're just not competing for the same trophies. And which is, that's a whole nother conversation. We talk Open Cup, but we don't have time. As I see Jared's eyes get really big, because I know he loves that topic. But yeah, so there's a balance, and realistically, the Rapids are built to compete for 3rd to 5th, right? And we might punch heavy some years, and we might punch light other years, but I think that slot where this team is organizationally, for a handful of different reasons that we can talk about over beers sometimes. But that connection with the front office is why we just have had a great relationship with them all the way back to Tim Henchy, and then now Porg is acting, as team president. A lot of support.
So I'm glad you have always just led with the community aspect of C38, because I think
we can't always lead with wins.
Well, I mean, the naysayers over the years have always attached the word click to the group, and I never got that. I always felt like onlookers, but like what is your opinion to that sentiment of people?
I think if you put 3 or more people in a room, you're going to have a click. It doesn't matter. You're going to have people that are going to connect with other people, and that's their tribe. So I think see, I'm lucky. I've never met a stranger, at least what I've been told. I'll talk to anybody. That's just me. I think for other people that's harder. And I think for people that have that challenge, they're not really comfortable making that ice breaking sort of like, hey, how you doing? But I can assure you, all the different groups we have would love to have you, as far as all the volunteer groups. The best way to break down that click stereotype, or if you genuinely feel, or if there's actual clickiness, come out to a TIFO paint day. Jump behind the line and help grill hot dogs with Dev. Ask Nina if you can help out at the merge table. Ask Austin if you can help with song selection. Ask Leland if you can go, help pour beers, or just pass out cups, check IDs. I mean, you will be accepted in a minute or less, and you will make a bunch of very fast friends. There's a reason everybody comes out on a Saturday and puts that much of their own personal time into doing work that isn't really the most thankful work in the world. On a 95-degree day, and you're sitting over a hot grill or a hot pizza oven, that's pretty thankless work, but it's because of the person next to them. And they really have built these little communities within the community. But I think, and I don't mean to be mean with this, but I think when people toss around the term click, I think it's a cop-out. But again, I'm an outgoing guy. So, but I think it's a cop-out. You have to put the effort in a little bit. Random people probably aren't going to come up to you and offer their car keys, right? Right? Like, hey, here's a bunch of, I don't know you, but here's $10. You got to go say hi to some folks. So if you see a circle of people going in, just introduce yourself. I mean, I've seen it happen a million times. That's how I knew everybody back in the day. You gotta take the first step. And if you don't, yeah, it might be disappointing for you in a public setting around a bunch of people where you don't feel like anybody's talking to you. Yeah, but you're also not talking to them. It's like the old adage, well, you haven't called in a while. I'm like, yeah, it's funny. My phone does make calls, but it also receives them too. So it's kind of a two-way street. But I just do not buy into the argument that we are a closed off sect. I just don't see it. And maybe it's a huge blind spot for me, but I just don't see it. And a lot of, ticky-tack complaints, for 13 years, if there was any negative issue with C38, I certainly heard about it because everybody was in my ear about it. But there's some complaints I've just never really heard remotely en masse to even consider it to be a real threat. I mean, and also with the amount of events we do, and that's growing now, like the Lariat Lodge bus, like, unfortunately, there was a Nuggets game 6 that night, so I wasn't able to. I mean, that might have been game 7, and I had tickets, and I was like, but I really wanted to go to that because I kind of put that event together. But like, there were 25 people jumped on a bus together and drank beers and went up and had a great time, had a hike. Like, there you go. There's no clicks on that bus, so you got to put the effort in, and so that's me challenging people, volunteering them to go make friends.
I think that kind of leads into my larger point. I think one of the harder things for me, for sure, when it comes to like my experience in helping out C38 was activation and getting people through the door. What have been kind of some struggles you've seen with that? We were talking before the pod about this not being a great town to go see sports, but not necessarily a great sports town.
Yeah.
How do you get people, like, what's the biggest challenge to getting people through the door? You know,
I think just for us, it's getting them into awareness, and then the next big step is getting them to come back. So the awareness thing, all you can do is push it through the social media, and you know, this is to go back to that partnership, that relationship we have with the front office. The front office has done a really good job of promoting us also. Now, there's a double-edged sword with that, because part of the reason, or there's a little duality in that on all ends, but like a big part of the reason the front office pushes our culture is because we actually have one. And that's always been a struggle for the front office, is how do you build that culture inside the stadium? And this is not being braggadocious. They've been very open about this, is we're sort of the key to that lock, and they see it that way. So they want all their people to experience a C38 day, because our pregame, they've tried to do our pregame and they've not had any success with it. And it's not lack of ideas. It's just they don't have the higher up support. They've, you know, the part of the reason we did, you know, live music at the tailgate was because the Rapids tried to do it and they couldn't do it. And I always like being able to pull off what they can't with a fraction of what they got. That's why we had a really successful Brewfest last year. They tried a Brewfest. It didn't go well. We did it because we're not charging for it. And again, but that's not a failure of the front office. That's just a challenge that they have with the bureaucracy they work in and all their vendor partners like Legends or whoever. So yeah, it's making people aware. And then the other problem that we always had was getting people to come back. And so most of ours is driven by word of mouth, bring a friend, that kind of thing. And one of the things we did to sort of attack that return back out sort of thing is we started working with the front office and just saying, look, we're not staffed to where we can call people back and say, hey, we saw you came to a game, but you guys are. So maybe you guys can help us with that. And they did. And that's why you now have, instead of a sort of 3/4 full single section, you have 2 sections that are routinely full. And that's a testament to Sean Sullivan and the work he did from the sales side. You know, Max Williams and some other folks over there. And then just understanding it's tough because you're working in collaboration, but you also have to maintain the independence. And that's why I've always liked working with Sully. He gets it. He understands there's a dividing line. And him and I have both had this conversation a million times. We don't care how they get to the games. We just care that they get to the games. And for us, you know, we have an open door policy with the tailgate. And I think once you experience that, you're going to come back. Now, whether you come back to a couple games a year, half season, full season, just one game a year kind of thing, that's the tougher part. But all we can do is just keep doing what we're doing. We're scalable. We don't need to grow to survive. We can shrink and survive and succeed, and we can grow and survive and succeed. We're scalable. So I do want to see it grow. For sure. But yeah, it's just getting the awareness, getting our people to talk more about it to people. You know, I talk about it ad nauseum. My wife hates it. Like, I always bring it up. I always have cards on me, like, you know, Uber drivers, whatever. Like, hey, here's a card. Give me a ring. We'll get you out to a game. We'll take care of you. So stuff like that. But people need to talk about it more, brag it up. And you're a member of C38. What makes you a member of C38? What makes you excited about that? Tell everybody. You know, tell everybody. So the word of mouth is probably the best, but, you know, social media is the old crutch. But
And that might be one of the reasons why people do feel it's cliquey, because a lot of people are brought in.
Yeah.
You've got to, like, how did you find out about C38? Well, my buddy comes every weekend.
Yeah.
He brought me out. Now I come every weekend. But that's also, that's how organic culture builds. There's nothing more of an oxymoron than inorganic culture, which is why C38 is important in building, shaping and then presenting what culture the Rapids have. Because as you mentioned earlier when we talked about the front office, they are beholden to a paycheck with a cranky signature across the back, which makes it tough to criticize.
Right.
Where C38 has been pretty openly critical of the team in general at times, with, I think, best intentions. How do you kind of see that role as Denver soccer has some interesting things on the horizon? So the culture of Denver soccer may be shifting slightly, but the core of what the Rapids are seems to be, what it hasn't necessarily changed, but it's evolved. Where do you see that now, and where do you see that going as we might face some competition for eyeballs for soccer in Denver?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that happened behind the scenes that people may not be aware of is so you always have Stan and Josh. Josh is very much a sports guy. Stan's very much a real estate guy. Stan's stepping back a little bit more. Josh is making more decisions. That being said, we're not. I mean, that's the problem of a conglomerate is there's a pecking order. I would fully expect the Kroenke organization to pay more attention to Arsenal, the LA Rams, the Nuggets, and the Avs. I would fully expect that. The amount of money involved is exponentially greater than in MLS. But there was the former person, and I don't know what the chief executive officer, which is the first person not named Kroenke, was a guy named Matt Hutchins. Really, really good guy. But he stepped away, and they brought in Kevin Dimoff, who had been running the LA Rams. And I've gotten the pleasure to meet all these folks. And Kevin gets it. He's been out to a few tailgates undercover just to kind of vibe it out. We've had conversations. I've gotten to watch some games with him on the road where I went to independently. I'm not just want to be clear.
You're on the PJ.
And also, like, my Nuggets season tickets, I pay for those. Those are not gifted.
They can't even get Armis on the PJ after his acceptance speech.
So you've got at the top down, but Kevin still has to answer to the Kroenkes. But I think it's allowing. I think there's a little more connectivity between the Kevin Dimoff's office, the CEO role at KSE. And with Porg, I think it's a little bit more trust, and I think there's a little bit more of an understanding of a need to grow it. I also think that the women's team coming in is going to have to light a little bit of a fire because they're walking into an instant boon. They get the benefit, like everybody likes the new and fresh thing. Plus, like Colorado's kind of the epicenter for women's soccer. We've developed so much talent out of this state. And they get the benefit of two launches. They get their initial launch when they first play, when they first putting the team together down in Centennial. And then they get the boost again in 2028 when the new stadium opens. So that's two major barrages to potential dollars and cents. But I think it's an all boats rise. But I do think, the Rapids, and the Rapids front office knows this, is that the in-stadium experience has to keep improving. And there are some challenges there that are within and without their control. So I'd be very curious to see what that develops into in that regard. I also know, the chief, the SVP of Business Ops, butchering the title, Wayne Brandt, had stepped away, and they're still working on filling that role. And I think Wayne had been with the club for 17 years. Wayne was great. I had a great relationship with Wayne. But just like with me stepping aside, not equating myself to an SVP sort of title, but fresh blood, fresh ideas, fresh energy is not necessarily a bad thing. I was bummed to see Wayne leave. Still talk to him. He sneaks into games. I'm not going to give away his disguise. I was about to give away his disguise, but he lives right across the street. I mean, he loves that team. So from a leadership standpoint on the KSE side, you've got some good components in place. I think there's stuff going around, that you alluded to, and I think it's the NWSL team specifically, that's going to draw more eyes on the sport. I think these are all good things.
World Cup coming up as well.
Yeah, the one thing I would love to see is the city leaders actively figure out how to support this sport. They're so scared of these international events now because of some silliness that happened over at whatever the name of the stadium is that the Broncos play at now, Empower Field now.
Invesco is always.
Yeah, and it's not, and to be honest, it's all pretty minor.
We're talking about the Nations League final.
Yeah,
or
just
general...
things like that. And I know the city leaders have their appetite's gone down on it. I think the owners, the Bronco ownership doesn't really. I think they were a little unthrilled how things. It's just it's a really solvable problem. You just need to have a little bit of a seminar with your security folks and explain it's a different culture. God forbid, have a quick conversation, a little like an hour of training, and just some conversations that things are just a little different. And it's not good or bad; it's just different. And it's a shame to see us miss out on like Gold Cup. We didn't really. The city didn't really back the World Cup bid. The Cronkies put $5 million of their own money into that. So I know the Cronkies get blamed a lot why we didn't get a World Cup here. They were one of the few people actually putting money into it to actually make that bid happen. It's just the city wasn't going to do it. And also FIFA's demands are pretty crazy. Like I think one of them is they expect you to shut down like an entire runway at DIA just for the possibility that the VIP may fly in on a private. Well, you can't. It's a major airport. You can't just shut down runways. But again, there's a solution to that. You could have probably done it at the Front Range Airport up in Broomfield. But there's just the governmental appetite. I'm glad they're supporting the NWSL stadium rebuild or build because that area needs a little bit of a kick in the arm. But on the international stuff, U.S. soccer stuff, I just wish they'd get a little bit more spine for it. It is what it is, though. But I think boots on the ground here, I think we're in great shape. I think there's smart people in good places that can say yes to things that I hope they understand they need to. And it's a little bit more than just a new scoreboard, although I wouldn't be mad.
The Rapids actually already have a red card for Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly. We start every game with a red card.
You get it.
But it's great. I'm in my 50s. Like I played Atari and Intellivision, so when I look at that scoreboard, it's just nostalgia for me.
Any other questions, Jared? Because I can transition into the listener questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into some listener questions.
Fielded some just on the various platforms.
And also, I want to apologize to everybody that's listening. I do talk.
Yeah, I mean,
so hopefully it's moderately entertaining, but I will go on.
Well, when we came up with the idea, we're like, what's the best way to like
reel me in?
Not only just reel you in, but like, I mean, it's kind of an end of an era. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not dead yet.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm still helping out. I'm still supporting some folks. I'm always here for Nina if she has any questions, and I'm still helping out, like, with John D and the buses. If he needs me to run beer for him, I'll run it for him. And, like Leland's got some stuff going on with Brewfest, so I'm helping him out with that. And like, I'm still around, and like Trevor with merch, but yeah, I'm just not going to council meetings and telling people what to do.
There is going to be like a watch party though, no, to celebrate. This is our way of celebrating Dave.
Yeah,
there's giving him a mic and letting him go.
Yeah, no, that's my favorite thing in the world too. There's a thing on June 21st. It's like there's no. I think there's no Rapids game, so it got set up, and Mark Bodmer was nice enough, and he told me about it. I'm like, man, I don't need a going away party or anything like that. And he just told me, shut up, you're having a party. I'm like, okay, then fine.
Shut up, you're having a podcast.
Yeah. So that's going to be on June 21st, and hit me up if you want to go. I think they're doing some lists for it. I have nothing to do with it. I'm a Midwest guy. I'm a little too, I mean, I'm brash and loud, but I also am humble. And I know where my flowers are at. I don't need them, but it's another chance where they'll probably put a mic in front of me, so I'll be all right. So, but it's flattering. It's flattering. It is what it is. But let's knock out some listeners' questions.
Yeah, that's all just to say that like some of our best experiences have just been talking to you and just picking your brain at like.
Yeah,
I recommend everyone do it because. Dave can go as long as you let him. So transitioning into some questions here. This is from Acceptable Muscle 5097 on Reddit.
Okay.
He's got 3, and I thought these are all very...
Acceptable Muscle?
Acceptable Muscle.
Do we want to have a conversation of what the hell that means? Do we want to break down some guesses and then ask him? Because I got more questions for him than I think he has for me, and I don't even know who he is. Anyway, sorry, I'll shut up.
My first guess is that might be a random name generation, but I would like to find out which muscles might be deemed unacceptable.
Yeah.
That'll be a question for Unacceptable Muscle 6098.
We got questions for you, pal.
Yeah.
What was/is the hardest part of running the supporters group?
Balancing the opinions. You're trying to create an environment where everybody can get along, but not necessarily get along, but at least respect each other. And there are some personal sort of rifts that folks have. I mean, it's just natural. But it's literally just balancing. It's the balancing. So like the protest we had, a couple of years ago, that went really, really well. It didn't start off that way. It was going to go a direction and I was able to come in and sort of, give a little bit of history and a little bit of my personal opinion. And we were able to, and the folks in the room trusted me enough, and they sort of stepped back and like, okay, let's relook at this. And they looked at it through this different lens. And I don't think there's been a better protest in MLS history, to be honest. I really think, when you got the city council quoting it, at the hearings they had about the development with KSC, that's pretty flattering. But it was understated, and it said everything that needed to be said in just three simple manners. So like Mason and the TIFO crew put that together. I didn't tell them what to say, but they nailed it. And then the open letter. But that's the balancing, because there are people that want to burn it down. There's people that think protesting's stupid. It's like, okay, but we got to do something. But trying to find that space in the middle where it works. And it's not making it vanilla. You want to still make it effective. You want to still have some flavor in there.
Productive.
Yeah, so it's really the balancing acts. Again, personalities, and then some of the decisions. You really have to take into consideration a very diverse group.
Yeah, because it was that following year where the front office, hired all those people.
Yeah,
and so that kind of is like a big, I guess I think the goal of the group is to essentially be a mirror.
Yeah.
to the rest of the stadium, to the front office, and to hold up that mirror of like, yo, we need some help here.
Yeah, hey, we're over here. But the other thing that's interesting, we talked about the relationship with the front office being good. that protest went off as well as it did because of the good relationship with the front office, because we knew where to hit. Not because it was a soft target. We just knew where to hit with the right target. And nobody in the front office was surprised. We have open conversations all the time. You've been in some of them.
Yes.
So I've been in some of them because of you.
You're welcome. That leads into this next question from the same Acceptable Muscle. I don't know if there's another one.
Yeah.
But did you get any major reaction from anyone inside the club and front office from the protest? And overall, what was your experience, if any, getting to interact with people inside the club?
Oh, yeah. There was definitely there were definitely conversations. The first conversation I had afterwards was with Porg. It was the same day as the letter going out, or it was pretty immediate. I don't want to give away too many of my cards here, but he called me and said, "Hey, I just want to give you a heads up. I talked to Josh in regards to Josh Kroenke. He's at the NFL meetings. He says, I said, hey, I need to have a conversation with you. He's like, wait till I get back. He said, it needs to be pretty quick." And so he got Josh on the phone same day that we put the open letter out. I know there's been a lot of theories about the letter that Josh wrote in response, and there was like, oh, somebody wrote that for him. It's like, no, that was absolutely 100% Josh. He wrote it on the plane from the owners' meetings in the NFL back to his place here in Denver, and so a testament to him for taking it seriously enough to write an open opinion. But you could also tell it was written by Josh because it missed a lot of marks. It was all real estate deals and stuff like that would only be written by Josh. Right. But it's, you take the good with the bad and you take the bad with the good. Right. So it's flattering that he responded immediately. He missed the mark, but at least we knew, but it was coming from Josh. So that was the first, that was sort of the first reaction afterwards. And then there were a lot of meetings afterwards. Okay. Like Porg and I had a few pints after that where we talked about what can we do to make this better? What can we do to fix this? And so him and I have had a lot of very off-record private conversations. And if you ever have the chance to talk to Porg, regardless of your opinions of him, because I know people have strong opinions about him, he's fantastic to have chats with. There's a lot of conversations you can have with him where he can take his president's hat off and actually talk honest with you. But it's out of respect, it's off the record. With my role, with the group and knowing Porg since he came to the club in I think 2014, 2015, we've built up a pretty strong relationship. I'd also argue it's a friendship at this point, where we can convey stuff back and forth before it hits the fan. So that's why like the protest wasn't a surprise, because I was able to voice to him beforehand the frustration, and it's bubbling up, and this, that, and the other. So the reaction to the protest was positive. It was positive in initial response. They understood it. They had to take the hit, but it was also immediately discussions were taking place on what we can do. And also, honestly, some of the conversations about trying to fix some stuff were happening beforehand. And Juan, you were in some of those. And so those conversations are ongoing. So it's not like, you got people that go into separate corners for 3 years and then it all blows up. So yeah, it was a pretty easy thing, to be honest, just because it was done so well by so many people in the group and they handled it well. I think the walkout was incredibly smart. It was other people's idea. I stayed behind to make sure nobody messed with the banners, so I got to miss the party in the tailgate lot, which was freaking fantastic. I did step out for a second, take a look. I'm like, oh man, we should just do this every game. like we have TVs at work.
At that point with the Rapids, missing the second half wasn't going to hurt anyone's feelings.
Right. And the tailgate crew was like, hey, we're just going to break out the grills, and they just started grilling up food. Nobody asked them to. They just did it. And then, we saved it. We had a couple extra kegs, held over. Nina and Matt set up some projectors. We had tents out. It was kind of the best night ever, even though it was heartbreaking that we had to do it, because at the end of the day, you want to support a club that you don't have to protest. But we were actually working with the front office. I mean, to put this in perspective, the message that was sent was not against the front office. The message we sent was literally to help the front office, to let the people know that signed their checks, hey, we're over here. We need some help. These folks need some help. And so it wasn't collaborative. It wasn't like conspired, but we were kind of speaking on behalf of the front office also. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, we know the battles that they fight. So, and then, the next season we end up getting, just some things did change. I mean, and then, they spent some money, they splashed some money on Raha, I can never say it the right way. Georgie, who's been an absolute gem. And they've been able to do some things. I'm not going to sit here and say that our protest made a difference, but I think, with Kevin Dimoff coming in, with Porg maybe having a little bit of the ammo that we gave him by pointing out the protests, and the fact that, KSC's lawyers got it thrown in their face at the city council hearings with Commerce City when they were trying to talk about the development deal. It's a little cherry on top, I think, for some of that stuff to move. I think we played a role. I just don't know how big a role it is.
Well, I think there were two protests going on at the same time.
Yeah.
There was a protest of a large group of people who had gotten tired of miserable soccer and had stopped coming.
Yeah.
And you had some that will never stop coming and are there every weekend for the tailgate, for the camaraderie. And that message had to be delivered. So I think that delivering that message effectively just goes to show that there is, a culture driver on the South Side.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And if nothing else, we helped play a role in getting rid of the Victory Way sign. So if nothing else, having that gone is fantastic.
I'm just waiting for that domain to open up so I can redirect it to all Box State Footy stuff.
Right.
I'm going to save Mr. Muscle's question for the end, his final question here. I'm going to transition here from our buddy Logan. Shout out to Logan again. He wanted to just kind of ask.
Is this Logan Brown?
Yes.
Okay.
He helped with the.
Yeah, he was a designer on that last tifo.
He designed that tifo.
Yeah.
He just kind of wanted to ask about the relationship with the Locos, how that kind of fostered in, how you kind of help elevate them, just kind of general context as to their role in C38.
Full disclosure, the Locos were the engine that kept me in this. Like I think what they do is so authentic and genuinely like that love of their community that they've built over there on the east side of the parking lot, the east side of our tailgate lot, and the passion they show in the stadium and the sacrifices that they make. Like that's just true, honest, non-tourism support. Like we get a lot of tourists in C38 that come out for the party. They're there for the football, and each other. I mean, don't get me wrong. so that was always a good litmus for me to stay plugged in. And so, but they're a very organic organization. Like there's no real leadership structure. At least that's what Miguel Cifuentes will tell you. But he's kind of the head dog over there, El Queso Grande.
El Capi.
Yeah. So and Miguel carries so much swagger over there. But also Miguel and I have known each other for a very, very long time, and we've become really good friends. And I think he trusts me. And I brought him in the board setup, when we had the board, and he was miserable. it was essentially shouting matches between me and a couple other people, and Miguel's like, "What the fuck am I work all day and I got to come to this?" so, but I think he trusts me, and also like I listen to them no differently than I listen to anybody else in the group. Like, there's a lack of Spanish-speaking representation, and then now, you're seeing a commitment to social media. There's Spanish-speaking social media for the Rapids.
The Rapids just announced a partnership with Tico Sports to do Spanish audio, and that's a radio station I have on all the time, 87.7.
And I know it's a concern you voiced, a lot over the years, Juan, is it just didn't feel like the outreach to the Spanish speaking community was done correctly. Now you hear it in the game when they do player announcements or any sort of big announcements during the game, yellow cards, red cards, whatever. So that engagement's happening, and it may only affect a couple of people, but sometimes it's not about how many people it affects; it's the act of doing it in the first place. And so I've always advocated for the Locos just because they need it. Because it's my job. It was my job. It was my role. They trusted me with it. I take it very seriously. But also like, there have been incidents over the years where the folks in the Locos have seen me get my hands dirty. And I think there's been some respect out of that. And I'm really flattered by that. Like there was an incident once when we first moved to the South Terrace, where there's some Salt Lake people that came into the sections before we bought the whole section. And they came down there with their scarves, and they were trying to start a little, and I'm like, this is really a bad spot. But they were like 4 rows from the Locos. It was 3 of them and then the Locos. And a dust up started to happen. So I got in the middle, because I know who I am and I know who I can call. And I also know that all the security and cops were at the top of the section just waiting for me to give a hand signal if they wanted to come down. Sometimes it's nice to have power, but you just don't want to abuse it. So I went down there and I talked to those guys and these Salt Lake fans and just said, hey, you're going to need to go. And they're like, who are you to tell us? I'm like, well, there's a couple ways we can be friendly or we can have the cops pull you out. It's whatever you want to do. But I got into it. But mainly my concern wasn't their safety. My concern is the fact that something stupid might happen from our side where people get thrown out. They start getting banned because of other people's failure to act. Like specifically Argus never should have allowed them there in the first place. So it's always the person that throws the second punch, right? And so, incidents like that, like getting my hands dirty and stuff like that and getting involved in protecting people, I think they've seen it. I think when we were dealing with the P word chant, I think I was pretty diplomatic because, I still have, was such a frustrating era because that's a word that belongs nowhere in football. But it's also, there's also some cultural challenges, not because of like some rampant homophobia out of a certain country. It's the fact that you have people, non-Spanish speaking people, telling Spanish people speaking what their words mean. And there's a foundation there that I think has to be considered. Regardless, the word needs to go. Miguel, the Locos totally agree with that. But if it weren't for them, that word doesn't get eradicated. And what sucked about it is they're the ones that get blamed the most for it. Mm-hmm. That chant didn't go away because of C-38. It went away because of the Mile High Locos. And so I always got frustrated when they get clapped on for it. And it's casual racism, anyone? Because that's what that was. But like we sat down with some journalists on that, and I had Miguel come in on those interviews. So I think that, like I said, there's just been enough trust built up over the years. Like I trust Miguel to the end of time, and I think it's vice versa. So yeah, and they're the core. They're the heart and soul of the section. They're there every night with the drums, with the cheering, on the rails, shirts off, losing their minds. So you're damn straight I'm going to protect the hell out of that because without them, we're nothing.
One thing I do want to mention to that is the last home game was a rain delay against St. Louis. Yeah. I ran my ass to get into that game, but what I noticed was Los Locos weren't there. I don't know if they had left or not, but the whole contingent wasn't there.
Yeah.
And in their place was these teenagers, and you know they're not as engaged with the culture. But they started doing the chant, and I you know, it's tough because I'm like, well, no one's stopping them. I gotta go up there and like tell them like, hey, guys, we really can't, because right now, if you keep chanting that's not gonna go against you guys. It's gonna make, you know, and we was the number one enemy there on that.
Yeah, and we had it pop up a couple years ago. It came back and it was a bunch of teenage kids, and it wasn't us. It wasn't the Locos. It wasn't us. It wasn't C38, and it sort of brought the dust off, and there was a bunch of news stories on it. It was just like, oh, guys, we'd killed this, but we were off our game. It was like the first game of the season.
Yep.
And it was 2 seasons ago.
New things and
a
bunch of
and I wasn't at that game either, because with the rain delay, I'm like, I'm just not. I'm still kind of recovering from some stuff. I'm like, I don't want to be in cold, wet weather. I know Miguel had a concert that night.
Well, what I said is, I'd rather tell you than the white people come.
Right.
That's how. And then you know what happened? They were totally cool.
Yeah.
They stopped doing it. You know what I mean?
And it's not to minimize the efforts of people in C38 that when they hear stuff like that, or they see a bottle getting ready to get thrown, there's a lot of active people in our section that will call you out on it.
It's that self-policing culture.
Oh,
as
yeah,
well, you know?
And I think we do a really good job of self-policing. I mean, I've talked to the security people that work for MLS, and they're like, you guys are the least problem in this stadium. And they you know, and it's been great to build those relationships over the years. That's why it gets frustrating when some of the Argus folks that don't know us overreact. It's like, guys, you're new here, give us the benefit of the doubt. And there's, you know, it's that whole respect my authority attitude. Like
respect my authority.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we had a meeting with the head of KSC, the senior VP for KSC that oversees stadium operations. He's a great guy. Can't remember his last name. It's Matt something or other, Mark something or other. Anyways, really good guy. And I just said, you know, maybe in the hiring, maybe you tell Argus in the hiring practices, if they've ever applied to be a police officer and were denied, maybe you just don't hire them, because it's kind of that.
Or don't
attitude.
Put them in our section.
Yeah, but that's gotten a lot better. That was some hard meetings this off season, and Nina's done great in that too. She got to inherit a lot of messes. So, but I didn't abandon her, and I was there in that meeting with her. But yeah, so that's where it gets frustrating in those regards. But yeah, if we're allowed to self-police, we do a pretty good job of it.
I got one from Rapids B-Ray. He's a co-host on the show here. But when he left C38, but I won't say you left just yet, but what's one idea or initiative that you wish you could have gotten over the line or gotten to do better for the supporters group? I mean, yeah, I'm sure you could still probably in some way, you know, finish something out through a proxy. But
well, you know, I think most of the stuff I wanted to get over the line, I got over the line. Like the Brewfest was always a thing that was lingering around that I want to get done. You know, I think I honestly, I think it's the challenge that's always been there. It's just getting more engagement with folks. I mean, I'd love to see like Paul and Logan Clary and you know, they're doing the best they can up in the capo stand, but like that's an area I'd love to see more people get involved. You know, get back into, you know, writing, you know, rewriting, you know, getting some more creative songs rewritten. Or some additional songs, or reprising some old ones, and you know, especially player-specific chants. We don't do those. I really wish we had more of those, but that's not really was in my purview. You know, my purview is, you know, just making sure they had the resources they needed to do what they needed to do. As far as stuff, like, did I have any projects that never? No, I mean we were.
I know I do.
Yeah, I feel like I just, there's nothing that comes to mind, and I don't mean that out of a sense of arrogance. I'm sure there are things. You know, I really wish we could get stronger away watch parties. I just didn't have the bandwidth. Oh, you know what? I know what it is. I really wish the Orr Foundation had more legs to it. But that was something I put together way back in the day, and it would get off the ground a little bit, but it just didn't get the traction I wanted. It's still there. It's still something we have valid uses for, that allows us to do certain things. But it didn't quite get as big as I thought. I would really like to see us do more where there's really strong community interaction. Like Food Bank of the Rockies, we did a day there. That was a lot of fun. I'd love to see us, have a C38 day where we go to a soup kitchen and help out. There's an organization that does makes a bunch of sandwiches and feeds the homeless on Fridays. The event you did with LAFC, where we built those sanitary kits, and we were able to get all the clothes donated from the folks at Broomfield Soccer. Like, those are the things I would like to see us do more of. I just ran out of bandwidth, and I think right now we're in a little bit of a transition period. But maybe as things settle down, maybe I can come back in and help the group out and take that on. To help build that charitable side. But I just think, like, that's the one thing. I never wanted us to try and emulate other supporters groups. I had to come to that determination, because it would always frustrate me. The front office would always like, well, how are you going to be? We need to be more like Portland. We need to be more like Seattle. I'm like, but that's not who we are. But there are things that they do in Portland. Like, Portland's charitable contributions are amazing.
Yeah.
But like they throw an idea out there and they have tons of people show up and show out. We never really got to that point. But it's also, we're Colorado culture. It's a different animal here. But yeah, that'd be the one thing I'd like to see that I wish could have gotten bigger and better, is that charitable side. We do a pretty good job of it, but we don't do a great job of it. And I think there's such an opportunity there.
Yeah, I will say that for me was kind of some of the more rewarding work.
Yeah.
Because it is like, I don't know, when we were there to donate the stuff, and just seeing the smiles on all the people, when we went Volunteers of America.
Yeah, when we went to Volunteers of America, you were there. It was Yumi and Warren Edson, and they were in tears.
Yeah,
because they had never seen such a mass donation, and that's a shout out to Peter South and is it Mike with Broomfield Soccer. They have been immensely generous.
Yeah.
In those campaigns. Yeah, we had boxes upon boxes upon boxes, and we changed people's lives. And that's pretty freaking cool. And that's stuff that I think is consistent with the soccer culture and the progressive side of it. I believe more in, it's great to have banners and flags and all these things. I think it's letting people know that this is a space that works. But going to a facility where they actually need volunteers and volunteering, providing goods or resources to organizations that need that's really affecting change.
It was funny. I had this immediately right after that whole time there, after that project, I was in some I guess some boards online, and people started talking about C38, and they're like, isn't that like, why is it apolitical? I was like, well, we do a lot more work, good work, just being apolitical outside of,
exactly.
any one way or lean, just by the fact that, this community rallied, and it wasn't necessarily, leaning one way or another, but it was just, to do something good and to do something charitable.
Yeah. And once you start becoming overly political, you become polarizing. And even if you're on the right side of the argument, and by staying apolitical, that's true inclusion. That's inclusion means inclusion. You can't have inclusion by segregation. Mm-hmm. So when you start putting over labeling things, and you got people that like my goal in with C38 or personally is finding the people that are on the fence that could go either way on an issue, and providing them a reason to come to what you feel is the right way of it. And you don't do that with over labeling something. And there's a lot of folks that come out to our tailgates that I have great conversations with and relationships with that don't believe the same as I do. I would hate to be surrounded by people that think the same way I do. Like a room full, like what the hell would you talk about? So, and I think it's, you create an environment where people that have different backgrounds, different belief systems can engage without the color of what that engagement should be. It can be more organic. And yeah, to your point, we do get involved. We do contribute. Like, we always have a charity at our tailgate for every game. We've contributed, money. We've contributed resources and goods. We've contributed people. That's actual impact, and it's not that we're not involved. It's not being apolitical is not being apathetic, and I think people confuse the two, just because they both start with A and have a P in there.
We accept red and blue as long as you're not wearing the two together with a Salt Lake logo on the left breast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's circle back to Acceptable Muscle for his final question here, which I thought is the best way to end it here. Unless you got anything else you want to mention.
Go ahead.
All right. What's the thing you are most proud of accomplishing with C38?
every time I go to the tailgate and see people having a good time. I mean, hands down. I mean, on a grand scale. On a hands down, when you see a bunch of people that you've never met before coming out and breaking bread and raising a pint and supporting this team because of the thing that you helped build, and they don't know who you are, and that's pretty cool. And seeing, so that's the big picture, but also seeing on a minor, more, micro level, is seeing certain people within the group that have grown as people, whether it's their views of the world or just, seeing them come up. And I'm going to throw John Boraz under the bus for this because he used to help run the buses, and why not use the analogy? But like I created an internship for him so that he could get his degree at Metro State, because he had a volunteer opportunity lined up with the Rapids, but they partnered with UCCS, so that program went away. So he wasn't eligible for it, and he needed this last little bit for his sports marketing thing. And to be honest, we got more work out of him than the Rapids would have, because the Rapids would put him on the street team and have him go out and spin a pinwheel, win a ticket. His project was the All-Star Game party, and he knocked it out of the park. And it was renting limo buses, and we had a bunch of money donated to us to throw a party, going to City Hall and getting the meters reserved. So the buses, because we ran like 6 limo buses, they needed a place to park. Like, he did all that. Like, I worked him like a dog, but then he got his degree. So on a personal level, because John's a really, really good friend, and he's living out in St. Louis now. He just got a job out there, so good for him. But
reverse Dave.
Well, right.
I'm going to St. Louis.
Yeah. There you go. But yeah, so it was just kind of it's just kind of cool to see individual growth. But as a whole, just seeing everybody come out and under this commonality of this burgundy and blue sky that we've put over, we've got ourselves and fallen in love with, or whatever. And just coming together and celebrating the team and celebrating the day out. That's at the end of the day, that's what it was all about in the first place. So seeing that grow and develop and knowing that it's in phenomenal hands now, that's what I'm proud of.
Awesome.
It's funny that you frame that in the way of a relationship, because if you're looking for the hot young thing in the room, it's not always the Rapids. But when you do fight through those years of a marriage, there are ups and downs, and it is a little bit of work. But it takes a little bit of work to make that whole thing go around. And there's a lot of people that a lot of people we named today, a lot of people we haven't named today that put in a hell of a lot of work for C38. So anybody who we didn't shout out in particularly, we're not forgetting about you. It's one big family, not always a happy family, but absolutely a hardworking one.
There's always that one cousin, but you just want to make sure there's also not that one uncle. We try and avoid the one uncle. And, if you get that joke, I'm sorry.
A bunch of fun uncles just popped through my head over there. Yeah. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Any final thoughts here, Dave, before we wrap up?
Come out. Say hello to me, to somebody, meet somebody new, shake a hand, go talk to the merch table, get involved. I can't say this and stress this enough. Volunteering, and you don't have to do it every game, just here and there, just be reliable, is incredibly rewarding. The people that are the core of this group are the people that also volunteer to help this group, and they have made friendships that go well beyond the parking lot. One of the things that's hard to do as an adult is make new friends, and this is just a pillar for that. It's just it's fantastic for that. Go talk to Austin Reynolds and his journey. He came in, he was an FC Dallas guy. I'm sure he's glad I'm bringing that up, but he's fully adopted into the TIFO and design crew, and he's loving that. John Detcher, who's running the buses, he moved here from Ohio, didn't know a ton of people, got involved with the group. Now he's got this whole bandwidth of friends. There's people I've met that I'm friends with now, that I've built great friendships with, that I never would have met outside of this. And it's not because of it's just we just never run into each other. Our circles don't cross, and so just come to a game, say hi to somebody new. And literally volunteer, and it's volunteer one tailgate a year, and you're going to make friends. And it's not hard work; it's easy stuff, and it's a lot of fun. And we also do really good at taking care of our volunteers. If you ever go and get one of the specialty items, or a pizza or a churro from the tailgate table, look behind the grills. There's a couple of things out there. We stock them with really good cocktail stuff. If you work for the merch tent, You got a place to sit in the shade and hang out. If you work at the beer tent, you don't have to wait in line. So there's a million reasons that are self-serving also. So, and go Rapids.
Go Rapids. Any closing thoughts, Jared?
No, thanks, Dave. When we did the C38 pod, yours was our highest ever listened to show. We expect no different here for Burgundy Banter.
After 2 hours?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And if you're still listening, thank you. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you out at the tailgate next Saturday.
Where can they find you, Dave? If you want to shout out your socials, will you be at the game this weekend?
I will be. It's our pride party, and it's a blast. It's so much fun, and the amateur drag show is hilarious. I hope some people have signed up for that. The bus is coming from the tight end, and it's going to be a party. So get out of your normal skin and go jump on that bus. It's going to be a good time. I will definitely be there, barring getting hit by a truck. My socials. You're going to have to tell me. I don't really know him. It's at Fulham Dave 1879, I think.
Something like that.
On Bluesky.
Pope of Commerce City.
Yeah, I don't mess with Twitter for a million reasons, but I'm on Bluesky. And then other than that, I'm just the tall guy that's up at the top of the section every home game. So.
Yeah, if you just whisper, "Where's Dave?" he will pop right next to you. And
just
say,
make sure you're inside of the
you?
Field, because if you catch him at halftime, you may not see the first 15 minutes of the second half. But that is how it goes.
Where can they find you, Jared?
Find me at Jared_Geisler. I am still on X in that cesspool of joy and wonders. So I will catch you over there.
You can find me at Juanners.Bsky.Social to follow all Box State Footy. Links and socials, go to boxstatefooty.com. Got all the links there. I'll probably throw up Dave's as well, just to get him some internet clout, because I know he very much appreciates that.
Yeah, get my Kardashian on with all my selfies.
But that's going to be it for Burgundy Banter. Thanks again, Dave, for joining us. That's going to be it. We hope to get out maybe a preview for the upcoming game. We didn't really talk much about Austin, but I feel like if there's any team to not talk about, it's Austin. So have a great rest of your week, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye.